Okay, so welcome everybody to our Lunch and Learn webinar series. This is where we tell you all about what's going on here at Compleat Software and how you can get the most out of your iComplete subscription. Today's session we are going to cover the layouts and some of the controls that are available to you to roll out to your users within the iComplete system. Today we're excited to introduce Jibba Jabba as our Lunch and Learn sponsor. Whether you need outsourced IT support, technical assistance, or just want to enhance your existing IT teams, Jibba Jabba offer the expertise and service that you need. And by being part of the Compleat ecosystem, Jibba Jabba enable businesses to make smarter buying decisions directly within our platform. And I'll show you the platform as we go through this session. So the agenda that we have for today, we are going to be obviously talking about layouts and security within those layouts. It does tie in to the workflows as well, so we'll just touch on the relationship to workflows, and obviously we'll go through a live demo. We'll then look at the complete ecosystem, and then there'll be an opportunity for any questions and answers. This is myself. I'm one of the implementation consultants here at Compleat Software. Just a few areas of housekeeping. If you could just ensure all of the microphones are off, obviously apart from my own, that would be fantastic. Any questions that you have, you'll find hopefully at the top of your Teams window there will be a Q&A section. If you just pop any questions in there, then we'll run through those afterwards. Obviously, if it's anything account related or anything like that, if you leave those out, we can address those separately. But obviously, anything to do with this session, feel free to pop them in there. We are recording the session, and everybody who's attended will get a link to that session directly, and obviously we'll make it available on the website. As with all the other Lunch and Learns, we make all the recordings available on the support site. So to jump into the session then, about layouts and the security controls. So the layouts, as we'll see, are basically the forms, if you like, that users will be filling out when they are creating a transaction, and they are dictating what data is to be recorded against that transaction. So we can go through and we can tell the system that, yes, for a purchase order, we want to record the cost center and account code, etc. On the invoice, we might want to have the account code, the cost center, and also a department code, for example. We do have the ability to have multiple layouts within the system. So we can have different layouts for different transaction types. There is obviously a downside to that. The more layouts you have, the more choice you're giving the users and potentially the more confusion you're giving. So the aim of the game is obviously to make it as broad and as inviting as possible, but also keeping it quite simple so that users aren't turned off by having to make those decisions. When we're looking at the layouts, we'll be able to dictate which fields are mandatory and which fields are optional. So as we'll see when we come on to the link to the workflow side, obviously we'll want to make sure that data fields that are driving our workflows are mandatory, etc. We may have things like a project code that's optional, doesn't have to be completed. When it comes to the security side, we can start to look at what data sets users themselves can access. And again, it's one of those areas where, yes, the functionality is available and it's very powerful functionality. We don't want to cause problems further down the line to the administrators by having too many approval groups locking every single person out of data and then having to keep going in and adding a code here and removing a code from there. So it is an area that does need to be carefully considered. And we can also look to set some defaults against the data as well. So that's more to kind of guide users and help users. So I'll show you how to do things like default a tax code so that it's already showing a 20% tax code, but the users could go and change it later if they wanted to. Just before we jump into the demonstration. Just talk a bit about the link to the workflows side of things, and obviously we've covered workflows in previous lunch and learn, so do feel free to go and have a look at those, that recording. But we can use the data in the workflows to drive the data in the layouts to drive the workflows themselves. So that could be one of the analysis fields that is being requested on the layout. We can use that in our workflow to drive that workflow. And obviously by making that data field mandatory, it ensures that we are always capturing that data and the workflow is always going to see it and pick it up. We can do the same with custom fields. So custom fields being the ability to add your own analysis fields that don't exist in your finance platform. You can create those directly within iComplete. Again, there's a previous lunch and learn. Feel free to go and watch that one about the custom fields. But we can obviously use our workflows to drive those. And again, in the layouts, we'll be stipulating that we want to capture this custom field against an invoice, and then the workflow can then work based off of that. We can also have one of the workflow drivers being the layout code itself. So, for example, when we start looking at the layouts, I can show you how to create additional layouts. We could have one layout for regular purchases, one layout for CapEx purchases, and then we could have the workflow that says if it's a regular purchase layout that's used, follow this route, and if it's CapEx purchase, follow that route. So we will show you how to do those. And we'll do that now. So I will just get myself logged into my iComplete demonstration system. So again, being demonstration, obviously this won't reflect your own setup. This is just my my test demo site that I have here. And what you've got in front of you is regular screen. Obviously the screens that you see yourselves or your users see will depend on their security permissions, but the one that we need to have access to in order to be able to look at layouts is the configuration tile. So I'll go into the configuration tile and we'll see in amongst all the configuration options is the layouts tile. So if I click onto the layouts tile, that will take us to the layouts section. So by default, iComplete will always create 3 standard layouts. So you'll always see when a new company is created, there will be a layout for credit notes, for invoices, and for purchase orders. Each layout is given a code, it's given its description, and then the transaction type that it is applicable to. We can add a new layout. And if I click on the drop down, it will ask me, am I adding a new invoice, credit note, or order? We also have the ability to copy a layout as well, which I'll be showing you how to do. We've got a search function up here. So if we have a lot of layouts, we can find the particular one that we're looking for. And whilst we can't delete a layout, we can make it inactive. And if we want to recall an inactive layout, we can toggle that switch and that will show us the inactive ones. And you can see that's denoted with either a tick or a cross as to whether it's active or not. So let's start with the purchase order layout. So I'll click into the purchase order layout, and what we'll see in here is we've got 3 tabs that are part of the configuration required for the layout. We've got the name of the layout, and this is you're able to change this, the code that's given to the layout, the layout that it is eventually going to use for the invoices that are being matched to this particular order. So this would be another layout, my invoices layout that I've got within iComplete, and I'm telling the system that if I'm performing an invoice match and I've used this purchase orders layout, then use this invoices layout when you're matching the invoice. And we've got this new piece of functionality here, which is the purchase order template. So we can have a different template, PDF template layout, depending on the actual purchase order layout that we are using. So I will show you that just before the end, but you can see here I've got 2 layouts. I've got my default layout and my test layout. And yeah, apologies for the confusion in terminology. When I'm talking about the purchase order template layout, this is the actual PDF. So this is where the order itself would be created, and that's that document that you would send to your suppliers. So that's what we are referring to here. So I'm just saying that if I'm using my purchase order layout, use my default purchase order template, the PDF template. From the actions button, we've got the duplicate function. Up here, we've got the active, so we can toggle whether it's active or not. And then here we've got a placeholder for the budget checking. So budget checking coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that. And further details on that that will be released soon. The next tab along is field configuration. And so this is where the main settings for a layout happen. And the entries that you see in here very much depend on whether you've got any custom fields and what finance platform you're connecting to. For example, Sage in tax, there'll be a lot more fields in here, whereas something like Accounts AIQ probably see fewer. I've just set myself up with a universal connector, so these are the default fields that have been presented to me. Now, the way this screen works is that we've got the field name itself. So there'll be a mixture of system default fields, and there will also be the fields that have come across from the finance platform that we're connected to. We have this column here, which is toggle switches, and it's called required. Now, one of the common misconceptions is that if I toggle this on, then that means justification comment is going to be a field on my layout. That's not actually the case. What this is doing, this is dictating whether it is mandatory or not. So looking at justification comment, I can see that it is mandatory, must be completed, and it's going to appear at a header level. My supplier comment, again, mandatory, must be header. If I look at supplier name, I'm not sure how easily or how clear it's coming through on your screens, but that supplier name is actually grayed out. Whereas I can click and toggle on these, I can't click and toggle on here because supplier name is a mandatory by default, must be supplied. We can't create a requisition without a supplier. When we come down to delivery date, again, that is system required, but we can choose whether we want to have it at a header level or at a line level. And similarly with account code, we can have it off or header or line. So we're telling the system when a user's creating a requisition for a purchase order, where are these fields going to appear? And the fields that we select will depend on what options we have. So justification comment can only be at a header or it could be off. If we're looking at mandatory fields, obviously if I go to create a requisition. So I had justification and supplier comments. Those are going to be both highlighted in red because they are mandatory. So I must enter information into these two fields because it's been set on the layout. And just a quick reminder for those who aren't sure, the justification comment is a comment that will stick with the requisition, the transaction itself, and that's classed as an internal, whereas supplier comment is the comment that will go on to the actual order PDF itself. So things like please deliver all in one go, please deliver to the main entrance, this sort of thing. So let me just go back to my layouts. So because I had justification and supplier on the layout marked as mandatory, obviously they're in red. If I want to make it optional, I can toggle the switch like so and save down at the bottom. Those would now appear optional, or alternatively, if I don't use them, I could turn them off and again save down at the bottom. As I said before, these fields have come across from the finance system, but if I was using custom fields, then what would happen is if I had a custom field within the system itself that's active, I've got some hidden ones that I can bring back into play. Let's bring area. Let's make that active. Within the custom field itself, I have the switch to say that it's mandatory or not. So if I activate my area custom field and now go back to my layouts, I'll find that I will have area as a field that it can now be added to my layout. There it is, area. It's currently off. If I now tell the system I want to record it at a header level, it's going to appear at header, but you'll notice that it has brought across that mandatory setting from the custom field itself. So if you're looking at working with custom fields and you want to toggle the switch for whether it's mandatory or not, it's within the custom field setting itself. So I'll just make a few changes here, and what I'll do is I'll save, and we can just have a quick look and see how that is reflected in the layout itself. So I've removed the requirement for the justification and the supplier comments, and I've added the area custom field up at the top, and we can now see that we haven't got those two big boxes for those comments, and I've now got area, and if I click on here, there's my area codes that had been created for me. So as you can see, it's quite easy to administer the layouts, to add the required fields. If I get back into the layouts section, it's the purchase order layout itself, I can just show you down at the bottom, we've got a couple of other options as well. So we have, just wait for the screen to update. We've got, as you'll see down at the bottom, the option to select which line items are going to be required. So do we want to ask for an item code and an item description, or just an item code, or just a description? So users that, or other customers that are using the online buying, you'll know that when you go to online buying and you then bring across the basket into iComplete, it will obviously bring the item code along with it if it's on the website, and it'll populate all that automatically for you. Some customers prefer to just have a description field, so they don't have to type in an item code, because those familiar with system, you'll know that if the item code is there, it has to have something in there. So you do have the ability to remove the item code from here. You've also, for the purchase order layout, got the option to manually enter delivery site. So the system will be looking to use either cached delivery addresses that have come across from the finance platform, or those delivery addresses that have been set up in the address book function. You can also give the option for the users to manually type in an address. So with that activated, if I was to go to back to the layout, just to mimic creating a requisition, when we're looking at the delivery address, what that would do is that would give you this little map button where you can manually type in the delivery address here. Obviously that otherwise it'll be looking for the addresses that have been cached from the system, but if you want to be able to give users the ability to just ad hoc manually type in addresses, that is the switch that would do it. We'll just move back into the layouts itself. So that's the field configuration tab. Remembering this is the, is it mandatory or not? This is the, do we want the field and where does it apply? We've then got the settings group tab. So in the settings group, this is where we're controlling what data within those fields is available to the users. So by default, the system will always create one security group, and when a layout is first created, that group will give access to everything. I'll just go into that one group like so, and the way the screen's laid out is that we have up at the top the name of the security group. We have the users who have been included in this group. Now, key thing to remember with this is a user can only be a member of one group at a time. So when I go and create another group in a moment, I will bring one of my users into that group, and it will warn me and say, this user is already a member of another group. Do you want to bring them out of that group and put them into this group? So again, if you are looking to tie down the security, then be mindful that you can only be a member of that one group. So if there's somebody that needs access to a kind of range of codes, you might need to set them up in a separate group just themselves. So that's our users, and then what we're seeing here is a column of the fields that we have selected at a header level. So there's my area, currency code, supplier name, and then the fields that we have at a line level. And then what we're able to do is we can click on these fields, and the right hand side of the screen will then populate to show us if anything can be configured. So things like item code, there's nothing that we need to configure. Description, nothing we can configure. When it comes to account code, the screen changes like so, and what we have here is a default value, but also restrict values offered. So perhaps not so relevant on the account code, but if I look at the tax code, what I could do here is I could set a default value of standard rate. And what that would mean is anybody who is in the security group, when they're using this layout, they will go in and they will have the tax defaulted to standard. They will then be able to click on the drop down and change it. The other option I've got set up is 0, but it's just giving them a bit of guidance. If the majority of all the transactions are standard rate, you can preset that for them. It's one less thing for them to worry about. We could then look to restrict values. So if it was always a standard rate and never 0 that the end users creating requisitions would need to use, what we could do is we could restrict the values offered, and I can come into here and I can tell it that I want to restrict it to just the standard code. Oops, click the wrong button. Yeah, just the standard code like so. If I move to the account code, so again we could perhaps, if it was an IT department security group, we could set a default account code to IT, but then we could go through and say actually they need to use IT, they might need to use stationery, and we'll give them some others as well. So you can restrict the codes that are available to them. We've got a little icon here, which is where we are able to copy and paste. So as you can see, I'm going through here, and if you imagine I've got hundreds and hundreds of codes, it is going to be quite time consuming to type those all in. So what this field would allow me to do is I can have just the codes themselves. So if I had the codes like this, as long as they are, each individual code is separated by a comma and there's no spaces, then I can literally just copy and paste from an Excel or a Notepad document, to copy them, paste them into here, and then submit, and then it will automatically upload those codes for me. So it just saves me having to go through individually choosing each of the codes. So the way that security normally works is either the customer would give access to everybody, and they would then find who the troublemakers, if you like, are within the system, the ones who keep choosing the wrong codes or keep selecting the wrong analysis codes, etc. And they would then set up security for just those people. Alternatively, they might roll out security from the outset, because it's a very set and defined criteria that each user has. So looking at this, what we'll do is I'm going to call this, I'm going to rename this and call this my IT group, and I'm just going to save that. So I've got a security setting for IT group, and that is defaulting the currency code to GBP. It is, let's say that they only ever deal with North and East. So I'm not going to set a default because I want them to choose, but when they click on the drop down for area, it's only going to show North and East. Whereas because I set a default for currency code, it's going to automatically show GBP. There's no restrictions, so they can choose any of these other currencies. With the tax code, it's going to default to standard, but only standard is available. And with the account codes, it'll default to IT, but they can choose one of these others if they so wish. So that's my IT group. What I will need alongside this is an admin group that has access to everything. So it's typically going to be perhaps AP operators who are then coding the invoice, etc. So what I'll do is I'll just create a new settings group. I will call it admin users. I will choose the user who's going to be in this group, and you can see the moment I selected one of these users, because everybody is already in that security group, it's saying the user is already attached to another settings group for this layout. If you add the user to this group, they will be removed from the other group. Do you wish to proceed? I'm going to say yes. So that's brought my new user in, and all I'm going to do here, perhaps not set any security or any restrictions rather, because I want my admin group to have access to everything. But what I will do again is perhaps just set some defaults just to make their lives a little bit easier. I'm just going to save that group like so. You can see I've now got 2 groups, and we could keep adding the groups as we go. But obviously the main thing to consider is, do you need to lock everybody down? Is it going to be beneficial? And what would the admin overheads be if all of a sudden something had been missed and somebody doesn't have access to a code? Do you have the resources to be able to get that code or a series of codes added in quickly so users can continue working? So that's our purchase order layout. Now, you'd be pleased to know that with the invoice and the credit notes layout, they are pretty much identical with everything that they have and the way that they work. Slight variances are with an invoice and credit notes is whether it's going to post to the financial system or not, or if you're using webhooks, which is another methodology without using a connector to be able to post to external systems. Still got the field configuration with all the different fields. We have a variance tab added into the credit notes and the invoices, and we have depending on the finance system that you're connected to. If you're connected to Sage, you may have a third option in here, but the 2 default ones that appear for everybody is when the system is processing an invoice that is using this invoice layout, do we want to automatically resolve matching variances up to the value of, and we've got a default value of 3p, so we can change that to percentage if we want to, and that's basically telling the system if the order number is clearly presented on the invoice, and if it's managed to extract everything correctly, when it's doing its automatic matching, if the order had £100 and if the order had £100, but the invoice had £100 and 2p, for example, because that would fall within the variance setting, the system would still match, it would fully match it and process it accordingly, or auto submitting, etc. if supply defaults were in place. It wouldn't hold it as a part match or an overmatch because it's within that tolerance. And the same again with resolving tax calculation variances. We've got a default of up to 3p, but we've still got the settings group here, and those work in exactly the same way. Now, what you'll notice is that I've only got the one setting group here, so security settings are on a layout by layout basis. Just before we finish up the demo, I'll just show you how to copy a layout. So I come into the layout and I can duplicate. From the actions button, I've got a duplicate function, and if I use that, that will take me to the main screen where I can see there's my copy, and I can then come into here, and because it's a copy of the default, it's giving me this additional option to link layout to a specific supplier. Now, this is particularly handy with the online buying side of things. Because I've got Amazon as one of my online buyers, I can tell the system that I want this layout to only be used for Amazon online buying. And what that would give me is the ability to change the data that's being captured, or preset data that's being captured on that particular layout when I'm processing an Amazon business purchase. And sorry, finally, just to finish up the purchase order template, if you wanted to have multiple purchase order layouts but different purchase order templates, then those are located from within the configuration side, ordering and matching. We would then go to PO templates, and you can see in there, there's my default template with the options to set whether it is net and VAT, etc. The colors, the logo, so on and so forth, any terms, conditions, and footer text. So this would be my default layout. I could have that attached to one purchase order layout, and then, for example, I could have another purchase order layout that's using a different template that is a different color, for example, with a different logo, etc. So we now have that functionality within the system as well. So hopefully that has given you an insight into the layouts themselves and how to configure them. I'll just move back to the presentation. So before we move on to the questions, just a quick mention of the Compleat ecosystem. So it's our built-in supplier network that connects businesses with trusted providers across a huge range of industries. Whether you're looking for office supplies, financial solutions, or specialized services, the ecosystem makes it seamless to find, connect with, and buy from the best suppliers without all the usual hassle. What you see here is just a small snapshot of the many suppliers available through our platform, and obviously there's our kind sponsors for this session, Jibba Jabba. If I just bring my Compleat system back, you'll notice that you have a banner sitting at the top, which is giving you access to the ecosystem as well as the tile down here. And clicking onto there will take you to that ecosystem, as I said, with all of the trusted suppliers. So let us have a look and see if we have any questions at all about anything. So I'll just open up the Q&A side and just waiting for that to come through. Questions. So sorry, apologies, just waiting for it to load up. Okay, so can't see any in there yet. Let's just see if any of it have actually gone into the chat. No, all good. So either everything's good, or they're not coming through yet. But just to cover off some of the questions that I do get asked regularly, things like, can we add new layouts? Obviously, yes, as we saw, but the caveat is that, do you want to potentially confuse users by having too many layouts? What you could look to do is restrict layouts to different users, and that would simply be by, through the security settings, just not adding the user into any of the security groups for that particular layout. So what we would find is, whereas here I've got two purchase order layouts, if I call this new, and when I go to create a requisition, what we'll find is that it will, in that drop down field that is normally just the one choice available, what we'll see is we now have two options available to us. So what we could do is, if the user I'm logged in as, if I remove them from all of the security, the security group that they appear in on this layout, that would effectively mean they don't have access to that particular layout itself. So that's how you can control people being able to only see a specific layout. But if they are able, then obviously this is a consideration, ensuring that users are using that that correct layout for the transaction that they are creating. Another question I often get asked is how to incorporate layouts into the workflows. So if I go back to the configuration side within the system, I've got my workflows here, and if I go to my orders workflow, then what we'll find in the configure criteria option, we have one of the options being layout. And so what I can do is I can tell the system if the layout is equal to, and there's my new layout for purchase orders and my original layout. So I could have different tracks in the workflow depending on what the layout was used. Also, other questions that get asked is how many layouts can we have? Can we create? And again, there's no rule limit as such, but again, it's bearing in mind the choices that the end users are going to have to make. Another question get asked is, when it comes to the actual data fields themselves, do you need to have all the data captured? And that's really down to the customer themselves and their needs. What we sometimes have is on the purchase order layout, to help the users with creating a purchase order, what sometimes happens is all of the data items are stripped out. So it is literally just asking who the supplier is and what is it that you're ordering, how much is it. The user doesn't have to do any coding whatsoever. What that does is that speeds up entry. It makes sure that there is no incorrect coding and there's no need for any security groups. The downside is that it does mean that the AP operator would then have to code it up themselves when they're processing the invoicing and matching it to the order. Whereas other customers would have it that be insisting on all of the coding and making sure it's correct when the order gets placed or created, which in turn then means that when the system is doing it automatically, doing its automatic matching, you can then automatically just inherit all the coding from the order, thus freeing up the AP operator. So again, it's down to the individual customer, how the users are. Is it an education piece that where you can teach the users? Is it a security requirement where you lock them down, bearing in mind potential overheads of admin if a new code's added or removed, what have you? Or are you happy for the AP operators to code that up and get it right first time round? So I'm just checking if I can't see any other questions. So obviously, if you do think of something later on, do feel free to get in touch with us. Our contact details are up front. Obviously, we've got our customer success team, success@completesoftware.com. Feel free to reach out with any kind of system overview questions that you have to them, or alternatively, obviously, there's the support desk who are always happy to help with any support questions at all. Just leaves me to say thank you ever so much for your time today. Appreciate you giving up a lunch break. It's now showing at 22, so hopefully you'll be able to get some food in you before you do the afternoon's stint. But thanks ever so much. Look out for the invitation to our next Lunch and Learn session, and look forward to welcoming you then. Thanks ever so much. Take care. Bye.